The person was sitting across from me and he looked me right in the eyes and he said, "You will never be as successful as me."
And so I think you would have experienced a number of situations where people look at you quite oddly, and yet you live it. You've experienced it. You continue to be able to, go back to that place.
You're worried that the sales that you're going to bring into the company are just going to fizzle out day one. You can't sustain that. And so I decided to leave after 4 years of building this company, and really with no clear plan.
And it doesn't matter who they are, what position they hold, the experience that they have, they will do the same thing.
They might just be in the wrong role. They might be in the wrong business. They might be doing the wrong thing, selling the wrong offer, and it's just not in alignment with who they are.
Fear sits in two different places. It either sits in the unknown of the future, or it actually sits in the past of an experience. And so we bring it into the present.
This is Let's Pay Attention, Hacking Consciousness. I'm Cathy Dimarchos. Let's explore what it means to lead, live, and listen with intention.
Well, welcome to Let's Pay Attention, Hacking Consciousness. This morning I've actually got an incredible guest. You'll adore him. I met him a little while ago through an introduction. But let me give you a very, very high level insight as to who he is. Eric Stopper is with us today. He's actually the founder and the CEO of Turnstone Partners. It's actually a RevsOff technology company specializing in automated off-market deals sourcing for business acquisition entrepreneurs. He is a jiu-jitsu coach. He's a professional podcaster, YouTuber, and Amazon seller and investor who has worked with over 2,000 brands. He lives in San Antonio, Texas, with his wife and 2 sons. And, I guess the topic of where we actually go in these discussions is consciousness. So I'm really going to let it go across to Eric, and let's see where this conversation goes. Eric, welcome.
Yeah, really glad to be here. Thank you for the invite.
I think consciousness has actually become a topical word, but what it actually means genuinely is something that I'd like to explore with you. And you've done some really incredible things, across the world with different people. So in your world, what does consciousness actually mean?
Yeah, it's a great question. You sent me those questions to think about before the show. And I'll tell you, just with a little bit of context, my spiritual journey has been one of twists and turns along the way. So I was born and raised Mormon, a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And for those who are familiar with the religion, it is Christian at its base, but they believe that there was a prophet that found a new set of scriptures and restored the gospel to the earth. So I was raised in a very active family, very normal family. I think that Utah Mormons have a little bit more dirt, skeletons in the closet type of thing. But in San Antonio, everybody was cool. I grew up with a bunch of religions. It's a melting pot here. We're military city. So I got exposed to a lot of things really young. And my dad was a Catholic hippie. So, he was never super militant about the religion, but it still came with all of its little nuances. So I eventually went to Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, got my undergraduate there, and then went off to serve a mission. So I spent 2 years teaching the gospel to the people of Kansas and Missouri. And I met my wife while I was there. She was also a missionary. So both of us were members of the church. And then I left the mission, finished and got married. And then before I got married, years before, I went back to Kansas City and I stumbled across this video called How to Open Your Chakras as explained in a kids' TV show. And it was from Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is an incredible show. Everybody should go watch it, even if you're 80. It will uncover things for you that you weren't prepared for. And in the series, this guru takes the main character through the process of opening his chakras so that he can get access to this great power called the Avatar state. And so the video, it's 10 minutes long. It breaks down each of the chakras, going from the base of the spine all the way up to the top of the head. And so I don't know what it was about this video. I was a fully fledged Mormon at the time, but I wanted to go all in on it. So I started doing the chakra meditation. And they suggested starting with the base of your spine. So I did the full set, and then went all in on the videos and literature to understand the root chakra and to seek to understand, just like unlock it. And all of the meditations that you'll find on chakras, they have you relax first. So you take your deep breaths and you find your peace and you relax your mind. And this particular one that I latched onto was you would see the thoughts in your mind as clouds going by, and you could either just observe the cloud and just watch it and let it go, or you could dissipate it. You could kind of make it turn into smoke. So faces would come by, events would come by, memories would come by, and you would just kind of gently let them, flow away into the ether. And I eventually got to the point where I could clear my mind so thoroughly that I could enter this void. And one day I decided to open my eyes inside of the void. And I was in there. If you've seen Stranger Things, it's kind of like this dark, this emptiness. And so I could go into this emptiness and look around and be there, almost like I was being astrally projected into this plane. And I was just sitting on, the bed or the chair inside of my little room that I was staying in this wonderful family in Kansas City. They were none the wiser. I was just up there doing my thing. And one day, a light, a little ethereal flame appeared in front of me. And I reached down, I touched the flame, and it became a person. The person was sitting across from me, and he looked me right in the eyes and he said, "You will never be as successful as me." And he just kept repeating that over and over. Over the next 6 months, I had 7 other entities appear in a circle around me, and each of them had a different message for me, all of them related to my fears.
Yeah.
And so, and they're all different colors. One was like a fear of being left alone. One was a fear of like getting stuck in a job that I hated, right? They were all just kind of different latent fears. And one by one, I would resolve them. And I spoke with gurus at the time and spiritual leaders, and they kind of taught me how to navigate this whole process. So one by one, I resolved each of these fears, and they would kind of sit back and they'd stop talking to me and they'd enter a lotus posture and just be in the circle with me. And the last one that was left was a red version of me looking back at myself. And he didn't say anything. He was just glaring at me. It took me 3 months to figure that one out. And I won't share all the details of what that fear was, but eventually I did resolve it. And in the process of doing that, what happened is all of these lights, all the bodies turned back into the lights, and then they came together in front of me, and they made this pillar of white fire in front of me that shot up into the sky. And I remember looking up at it and seeing it go into the void, and then it crashed down to the top of my spine and filled all of my body with this electricity. I felt like I was going to explode. I felt like I was being lifted off the ground, and I couldn't catch my breath, and I thought I was going to die. And then this like key unlocked in the bottom of my spine, and I had opened my root chakra. I felt this warmth permeate my body. And so I took that experience, and then I went up to the next chakra. I went to the sacral chakra, and I started working through that. During that time, I moved to Hawaii, and I had a very similar experience, a little bit different. It was, instead of people, it was these like globules of like dripping liquid that were speaking to me. It was a really far out experience. And so I had a similar experience there where I opened that chakra, and then I moved up to my solar plexus, my fire chakra. And I remember I was meditating on the coast of Haula. I would burn little coconut fibers under this banyan tree, and just the most serene location ever. During that time, I had all sorts of visions. It was the fire chakra is a really fascinating one, because a lot of your like self-doubt exists inside of your solar plexus. And I come to find out later that there are these little shards of you existing inside of your body, these little conscious elements that can speak to you, and they'll serve up all sorts of really interesting information for you to help you along your journey. Your fear one, which often lives in your heart or in the bottom of your spine. A lot of people feel anxiety in their chest. That one is particularly useful. It's constantly trying to protect you from danger. And if you tap into it and you ask it questions, it's typically giving you very like positive reinforcement. Like, you got this, you can do this, you are capable of this, you know exactly what to do. I love you, right? You can find a lot of that energy inside of those centers in your body. So fast forwarding, I went back to BYU to finish up my degree. During that time, I got married. And so I took this experience that I had back to all the people at this Mormon institution, and I was sharing it with them, and they were like, I don't know if that's real. Like that sounds kind of wonky and woo woo. But I knew, I had this, they say in the church, I have a testimony that the church is true. I had a testimony that this experience that I had was absolutely valid. I wasn't taking any psychedelics. I didn't even know what psychedelics were at the time. And so that created a wedge in the religious view. And from something that you're raised in from a young age, when you have a wedge like that, it can create a lot of issues in your life.
Yeah.
So eventually in 2019, we left the church. We officially departed from it. And then about 50 days later, I sat in an ayahuasca ceremony. I got introduced to a good friend who had another good friend who got me to do this up in Ogden, Utah. And that experience opened up doors of perception that I could never, I couldn't even explain on the podcast, everything that happened there. You live lifetimes, right? You experience so much. It's a very, you got to be ready for it. And I probably wasn't, I was right on the cusp of an existential crisis, and it was a very weird space for me to be in. So over the years, after the integration and after many, many conversations on my own podcast, talking to people about their stories of self-discovery and several psychedelic sessions, lots of meditation later, tons of ice baths and fasting, I started to reconceptualize the divine. I became interested in neurotheology, right, which explores the line between where the divine ends and where your physiological response to divine begins, because you have to experience it inside of your body. So it stands to reason, like the two camps are like it's 100% in your body or it's 100% God, and the neurotheologists disregard that and they say, no, there's somewhere. If you hear a voice, there's something in the auditory senses. Your prefrontal cortex is processing that information.
Yeah.
Did something touch you to have you do that? Well, let's explore it, right? Let's try to figure it out. So people do, they do brain mapping and thermography and pulse oximetry and all sorts of things to try and understand the body's response to these mystical and spiritual experiences.
Yeah.
And so the whole tapestry of this experience that has been woven over the years has led me to do a real deep dive on what consciousness actually is. And the simplest way that I can explain it is you have these moments of, we'll call it hyper awareness. And I can think back to one particularly palpable experience where I was fully conscious, I was fully alive, I was absolutely in my body, and I could feel everything from head to toe, and I was at one with the universe. There was this kind of coalescing and alignment with everything. I was taking out the trash in my first apartment. I was walking in the alley in the driveway right next to our little apartment. I'd been married for maybe 3 months, and I was looking up through the sycamore trees. There was this big property, like this mansion next to us. I was looking up through the trees, and just the way that it all hit me helped me reach this point of full consciousness, this full awareness, this fullness, right? I just felt filled to the brim. And it's fascinating because I can go back to that moment. It's locked inside of my consciousness forever. I can feel it. I can access it. I can gain clarity and suck myself into that moment. It's sort of a happy place, right? And so as life has continued on, what I have found is that the pausing, just taking a moment, not speaking, not doing anything, not trying to do anything, you can access that consciousness. You can hold on to it for just a second. And just like in the ayahuasca ceremony, right? Like if you try to reason through it and be like, oh no, like I'm just in a ceremony, I'm okay. It'll take you underwater again and just like hold you down until you surrender to it. So there's a combination of neurochemistry and like almost lack of logic and surrender that helps you find this present moment.
Yeah.
And that present moment is ultimately where consciousness is found. And if you can live inside of that, all of your decision making gets better. All of your, emotional responses to things get better. You start to steer and navigate the ship rather than just like cursing the water and the storms that are tossing your vessel on the sea. And so to me, that's what consciousness is finding that moment that exists in you at all times. And you're constantly driven to be distracted from that moment. And it takes a concerted effort and an awareness of you and what you believe and what you're feeling to be able to access it on a daily basis. But it's like water flowing through your hands. You can hold it for a moment. It's very hard to keep it up when life is lifing. And so, yeah, that's what consciousness is to me.
I love that you actually gave such a detailed story of your experience, because I think it allows people who have not experienced what you've said, and everybody does experience things differently, but, I, like you, live in a world where logic and strategy and, understanding through things through the lens of what we can touch and feel and see is, the normal world. But the reality is that we do all have the ability to be able to sit in that space, whether it be a micro moment, whether it be a glimpse, we have that ability to actually experience, what you actually have just shared as consciousness. The trouble, I guess, is that so many people need fact, but to actually get to that position of realization genuinely needs people to let go. And so I think you would have experienced, a number of situations where people look at you quite oddly and say, no, that's just not possible. And yet, you live it, you've experienced it, you continue to be able to, go back to that place. I know that I can take a step and actually, position myself there at any given moment. And people look at me very strangely. But I've also actually had people say, what did you just do? The room just moved. Right? So how do we actually, or how would you actually say in your everyday life, particularly in business, when you come to actually, I guess, form those relationships, because we all need to live life, how do you actually integrate that into your everyday life?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I think for the longest time I didn't. I tried to make decisions purely based off of logic and then ChatGPT, like trying to work through all of it. And I found that a value structure works really well to just like encase all of your decisions and your day-to-day actions into a model that allows you to make the decision regardless of like whether or not the consequences are not necessarily what you might want. And so I write down my values pretty much every day, and find time to journal as well. I've kept a journal since I was 5. And so I've got, almost my entire life documented. Back then it was my mom dictating for me, writing it down for me. And I've got it all through my middle school, high school, college life. I've been doing it for years. And so I've got this chest in my room with all these things. And so that has helped tremendously. But in business, I was stifled quite a bit. I was in a state of, I was in my skinny cow phase. And what I mean by that is there's a story at the beginning of some book, and I honestly can't remember what it was. I picked it up in a library in Provo, Utah, and it had a story in the first page. And it was about this poor man that lived in a village, and this guru came to town, and all this guy had was a skinny cow. And they picked this man to host them. He had this small family, and they could get just enough milk from the cow to be able to survive, and they had a happy and simple life. So this guru came to town, very esteemed, and they wanted to, put a feast on for him. And so they slaughtered the cow. And they thought that, okay, we're going to be able to like hold on to this meat for a long time. This will feed our family forever. But the guru and all of his entourage ate every last bit of the meat and left town and, left this guy with nothing. Years later, they came back to the same town, and they saw that this man had made something of himself. His house was up on a hill. He had a great estate and lots of resources. His family was very abundant. And one of the followers who was there on that night asked the guru, that night when we feasted with him, you're not a big meat eater, but yet you just kept on going for seconds and encouraging us all to eat until he had nothing left. Why did you do that? And he said, oh, he had so much power within. I just needed to get rid of that skinny cow. And so I was in a skinny cow period of my life where I had gotten into a business, And the business was just enough to survive. And I had a business partner who we tried our best to make it all work, but like the fulfillment just wasn't locked in. I brought a lot of clients in and we just kept losing clients over and over. And so during this time I have two business mentors, and one of them is actually a spiritual mentor. And I want to give a big shout out to him, because the work that I've done over the last couple of months has culminated quite a bit of prep work, I'll call it, over the last decade, to help me find a lot more peace and a lot more direction in the decisions that I make as a business owner each day. And so both of them, when I was explaining what was going on in the business, they said, you need to get away from this business as quickly as possible. This is not a good fit for you. You're out of alignment. You're stressed all the time. You're worried that the sales that you're going to bring into the company are just going to like fizzle out day one. Like you can't sustain that. And so I decided to leave after 4 years of building this company, and really with no clear plan. I had a couple of like side projects that I had been working on. And one of them in particular was a private equity firm that needed deals to be sourced, off-market deals.
Right.
And I knew exactly how to do that. I had done it before. I had the experience. I had the technology. And so we got into it, and we're getting like 200 calls back a week, like crazy. These business owners want to exit. The boomers are moving from their business, right? Like this is the time. And so in the process of like slaughtering this skinny cow, I ended up moving into something that has a lot more alignment with me. And it leverages my skills in a great way. And now I get to be in charge of the way that the product is fulfilled. And so moving into this role now, I'm not coming from a place of lack. I'm not coming from a place of fear. And so my decisions are much more grounded in alignment. And I would suggest to anybody that's listening that feels like they're making the wrong decisions all the time, they might just be in the wrong role. They might be in the wrong business. They might be doing the wrong thing, selling the wrong offer, and it's just not in alignment with who they are. So any decision that they make is from a place of a lack of consciousness, because you can't make decisions from fear. All of the best, coaches and manifest your dreams type coaches out there, and rich, abundant folks who have crushed it without daddy's money, right? Like they take naps during the day to like relax and keep their brain sharp. They let answers just kind of come to them. They approach things from a place of abundance. And anytime that they are feeling fear, feeling anxiety, they won't make decisions. They know that they can't do it. And so it's funny. We were just talking about this the other day. My wife is studying neuroscience right now, and she took a test, and she comes home. It's happened like 3 times in a row over the last couple of months, where she says, like, I knew the answer to this question. I put my first answer, and then I came back to it and I doubted it, and I changed my answer and I got it wrong. Your intuition was correct. And the only reason that her intuition was correct is because the prep work that she had put into it made it so that her first inclination, right, her first try at it was the right one. Without that prep work, if she was just going into it totally cold, then she probably would have gotten it wrong off of the first get because she wasn't prepared for it. So if you can over prepare and go with the flow, then the decisions that you make in your business are much simpler. It's the whole idea of niching. If you know this is your ideal customer profile, then you remove the decision on anybody that's not that ideal customer profile, and it makes those things way easier. If you get an opportunity that comes by, you're able to quickly filter it out because you say, that's not my customer. So then you have to decide, okay, are the resources that I'm going to put in, and then the logic starts coming into it, and you can have other decision-making criteria. And this is something that I would recommend that everybody does that's struggling to make decisions in their business, is based off of your values, you just have certain checks, right? Like, do I like this person? Does this project sound fun, right? Do I have the capacity currently inside of my business to run this? Like really simple things that can be founded in values. And so in each of my businesses, I have separate values. And then for myself, I have my own separate values. And those are what drive the decisions and help me tap into that intuition. So you over prepare, you pre-plan call it like the psycho-emotional side of how you approach decision making. And ultimately that ends up giving you a better framework through which to make decisions, and you can feel a lot more confident in them. And then you never make a decision when you're stressed. You relax, you kick it. Even if the salesperson that's hunting you down is pushing you and saying, hey, you're like, this deal is not going to be on the next phone call.
Yeah.
If you're in a state of lack, then when you come back to that phone call the next day, then it's definitely not going to be there. But if you do it from a place of abundance and consciousness, then you'll ultimately make the right decision, and maybe something even better is going to come along on the next call or with the next person that comes to you. And so it's hard fought, and I've doubted a lot of my decisions, and I've made some crappy decisions along the way, some really just really terrible ones. And in retrospect, on every single one of those scenarios, I look back, and one of my first check marks on making a decision is whether or not it's wise. And wisdom, right, is a combination of all of the things that you've been taught and all of the insights that you've gained up to that point. And so if you check with yourself, you'll find, oh, someone shared with me a while ago that I should never sign a contract on the first call. So no, it's not a good idea to sign this contract with this person on the first call, right? This is good advice that I was able to receive. Or you never go into business with a friend, right? Like that makes it really easy to just be like, cool. No, I am not going to go into business with you. Like I value our relationship way more than that. Even if it seems like the best opportunity ever, it's not wise, right? You learn from the people who are older and better and more successful than you, and you put those arrows into your quiver so that when it's time to go to war, like you're ready. You've got all the ammo that you need.
I love that you actually brought alignment and values, into that actual roadmap. It's something that for me, I don't do anything without actually enabling people to understand their values. And it's interesting when I actually say to them, what are your values? I think the most common response I get, Eric, is, oh, nobody's ever really asked me that. And then they'll rattle things off. It's like a tick list. Let me just tick it off. I'll give you something. And it doesn't matter who they are, what position they hold, the experience that they have, they will do the same thing. And when we go through it, I remember just recently actually going through this very thing whilst I ran a retreat, which was a conscious leaders retreat. And people think, they think logically about what the values, should be. But when it actually comes to the reality about explain that to me and how does that then fit in, they then realize that's actually not what's important to them. And so, to your point, I know I always actually say I'm very clear on my values. I don't compromise them for anything, for anyone. I've said no to, I've said no to a deal that was $100 million and because it just didn't align. It's that simple. So when you know exactly what you stand for, there is no compromise. So you in that microsecond can say no. And my experience is that when you learn to do that, you then actually give yourself the opportunity to have something land right in front of you that is exactly what you actually need to be doing and who you're actually there, to be doing it with.
Yeah, agreed. I'll tell you, so I went through an exercise when we left the church. I don't remember who told me to do it, but I'm super grateful that they had me do the exercise in advance of that question being asked of me. They said to create every value, have like a double elimination bracket that leads you down to 3 to 5 values that you resonate with. So integrity and honesty. All right, integrity, right? Like that kind of encompasses honesty. Or like commitment and integrity. Okay, integrity wins again. And so this big grid of things that you find important then start to coalesce into these like top 3 to 5 that end up resonating with you because you absorb all of the ones that might just fall under the single category. Yeah. And so I ended up doing this exercise and ending up with these 5 that have stuck with me. And so anybody that is struggling to like come up with values or hasn't done this exercise before, I would encourage them to do it and then write it down like every day for as many days as you can in a row. And over time, if one isn't quite resonating, if it doesn't feel good, then like double elimination again, bring one in that would resonate a little bit more and see where you can, fold that other value into some of the other ones. That helped me decide what was important to me. And I brought with it all of the stuff that I had gotten from the church. So there's a lot of values that get taught in the Mormon church. Young men are encouraged to be good priesthood holders. And priesthood is just like the power from God that they claim that they got from Joseph Smith. But we were reminded of it all the time, right? Is this something that a good priesthood holder would do? So that wrapped itself into a bunch of things. I'm an Eagle Scout. A scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, brave, thrifty, clean, and reverent. So I was able to take that list and start to combine elements of it into a list that I use to this day. So that exercise has been invaluable for me over the years.
Yeah, I love that. In fact, I think I did that a few years ago, and perhaps that's where my crystallization actually came from. Talking on that, you also actually shared, Eric, you're actually able to make those decisions really, really quickly. In those moments, do you actually experience just a simple knowing rather than having to go through a logical process?
3-4 months ago, it was very logical. But my spiritual coach, this cat, Yeshua, who ironically was I managed a business for him years ago, and then he sold it all off and became this guru, this coach, after having a Kundalini awakening of his own. What he teaches is fear and love and doubt in the body. So whenever you're feeling anxious or stressed, you look for it in your body. If you have pain, if you have neck pain, back pain, you focus on that pain for a second and you express all of your love and gratitude to that pain, right? Thank you for being here, right? Thank you for waking me up and keeping me conscious and loving me. You've been with, especially anxiety, right? You've been with me my whole life, and you've obviously been trying to tell me something all of this time. So what is it that you would like to tell me? Can you hear me? Are you listening? And you'll find that it answers these little shards inside of your body. The two most palpable ones are in my chest, where my fear lives, and in my solar plexus, where my doubt lives. They have their own personalities. They're little pieces of you that have been with you for your whole life. And when you strip back all of the feelings that they bring to you, right? It's just an alert system letting you know that they're there. But when you actually start to speak to them, you'll find that they have their own voice, their own personality, and they'll start to give you insights about what it is that you're looking to make a decision on. So now that's what I do. I don't necessarily I'll still collect all the data and weigh all the options and make sure that I have that I've done the prep work so that the intuition can take over. And then I do the Silva 3-2-1 meditation. And if nobody's ever done that, you should do it. It's a 20-minute meditation on YouTube that you can find for free. But you go into this relaxed state, and then you find the sensations inside of your body, and you start to speak to them, and you ask them the decision that you're trying to make. Do I take this opportunity? And they will tell you straight up, yes or no. And it is just clear as day. If you silence everything around you, you can find it. And sometimes they'll leave you to it. It's kind of weird. They'll say, actually, this one doesn't really matter that much. You could take it or leave it. It's fine. They'll give their recommendation and then they'll move on their merry way, which is a little bit frustrating. But those parts of your body, they're still in your corner, and they just they want you to level up and figure it out. And I found that my fear, which is a very to me, he's this 13-year-old kind of chubby version of myself, right? That is hiding away. And I almost have to coax him out. But when he speaks to me, it is such truth that I can't help but go back and check in with him and make sure that I'm doing what I should be doing. I'll even what should I be working on right now? Even just a more nuanced question, what should be my next step? What is my highest priority? And it'll give me names, it'll give me things to do, it'll give me apps to open, just all sorts of stuff comes from this. And then the doubt is this super aggressive, very like burn the ships type of personality, almost like chaos inside of me. And it's very much this protective layer in my soul that is trying to cut through all the bullshit to say, of course, this is what you're supposed to be doing. Like, this is it. Yeah, do it right now. Like, go and make it happen right this second. You've done all the prep work. You don't need to do anything anymore. The voice is loud and strong, and it will just cut through all of the noise and get to me. And so every 2 hours, I have an alarm on my phone. Actually, it went off right when we started the show. It's soul work is what is the reminder. Every 2 hours, soul work hits me. Whatever I'm doing, I have to stop. I do my quick meditation, and I check in with my fear and my doubt. And those are the elements that ultimately help me to make the decisions lately. This is a new development for me. It's something that I've never done before. And so now, like, things are falling into place like they never have. I was so scared leaving my company that it was going to be this, this absolute shit show and I was going to have to get a job. But I started saying no to opportunities and just focusing on like what I knew I needed to do. And they just kept stacking and stacking and stacking one after another, new things, exciting projects, cool stuff, people with big budgets. There's like no mention of the economy ever with the people that I talk with. They're really excited to do these great big deals. And it all came from this like communion with these shards of eternity that exist inside of me that have been base fears, base feelings for my whole life. So hopefully that answers the question. Kind of a long-winded response, but hopefully that hits what you're looking for.
No, I think it'll actually make sense. I often talk about fear is obviously one of the emotions that, everybody actually experiences. And, to apply logic to it, I actually allow people to think about what is it that they're actually fearing. And, fear sits in two different places. It either sits in the unknown of the future, or it actually sits in the past of an experience. And so we bring it into the present. And so what I actually allow people to do is experience now and the gratitude that they're actually sitting with right now. Because when you sit in the present and you sit with gratitude, fear can't coexist. And so it is something so simple that can actually be applied anywhere, and anybody can do it just by actually recognizing that. And that within itself, it actually calms the nervous system. It actually brings stillness, and so there are so many things that we can actually do just as a tool, when shown, to actually bring that level of consciousness to our awareness, no matter where we actually are. And it can be shown to every age group. There's nothing that can actually prevent it when it's just broken down so simply. There was something else that you actually shared as you were talking, and I think it was actually in respect to your experiences of having noise. And I think we live in an environment where noise has actually become almost like the go-to place, and we don't recognize that we are allowing noise to actually infiltrate. And so the fact that you bring it, a 2-hour, I'm going to say opportunity for you just to pause and actually quiet and move away from whatever that stimulus is so important. Doing is not the solution. It's being.
Yeah. Your instruction on gratitude and fear, there's a scripture in the New Testament, 2 Timothy 1:7, that says, depending on the translation that you're looking at, God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Right? So I'm really curious on neurologically, like what is actually happening in the body when you're experiencing gratitude and how it affects your amygdala, right? The part that's helping you be fearful. But that, just making that distinction and finding that in these old biblical references has been quite a comfort. the practices, right? Like the daily and the hourly practices are critical to being conscious. And I'll say for anybody that is trying to become more conscious, if they feel like they're walking around like an NPC that just, can't make a good decision and feels like they keep spinning their wheels, my prescription to them is to do a 7-day fast.
Mm.
No food, only water, a little bit of salt to keep your electrolytes up. And at every meal, you meditate. And so if you're cooking dinner for the family, cook dinner for the family and meditate while they're eating and just be in joy watching them, feast on the fruits of your labor. Go at it for 7 days, eat a light meal on the 7th day. At the end of that, you will be a higher order being. You'll be a new person. You'll be reborn. It's a baptismal process. Other things that can accelerate the game are things like ice baths, doing something particularly challenging that, kicks your parasympathetic nervous system into gear, long distance running, adventure racing, that sort of thing, picking up a new skill. All of those help to elevate your consciousness. But I'd say the fast is, bar none, one of the best decisions that I ever made. I finished my first 7-day fast in May of 2025. And I came out of that feeling abundant and feeling like light as a feather. I did jujitsu every day during the 7-day fast, and I was teaching and rolling, and I was an animal. Obviously, like, I was hungry, so I was probably just like keen. My senses were all dialed in, trying to get a meal, just slaughtering everybody on the mat. And so, yeah, as a prescription for anybody who is trying to almost like hack their way to consciousness, that's what I would say is go for broke and hit a 7-day fast and see how you feel at the end of it.
Eric, you, I think, touched on something that is really critical, whilst you've actually just shared, a fast track, way to being able to experience that moment of consciousness, is likely through a fast. The daily practice is something that is so critical. And I think people look at things and think, I've done it once and now, I'm an expert. Or they've read something, and that it's interesting to me that people can consume so much of the internet, or through books, and they think that they've actually now become an expert. But the reality with consciousness is it is a daily practice in everything that we do. Even in this conversation, just being present, and listening and actually feeling you and listening to what you're actually saying between the breath for me, that is actually what consciousness actually incorporates. It's not about wondering what anybody else is doing or what perhaps we're missing out on, which is what the noise feeds into. There is no shortcut per se. It's something that we have to actually live, eat, and breathe every single moment to be able to stay in that moment of what I would actually say knowing.
Yeah.
So if I was to actually ask you one question, Eric, people would have listened to what you've actually shared. There's been wonderful journeys that you've actually allowed people to see, who you are as a person. What is it that you would want them to take away from this episode?
Oh boy. This practice that I've done with Yeshua, everybody should do it. They should find those little shards inside of their body and learn to speak to them. Next to my chakra experience, it's been one of the most important tools that I've ever added to my life. I stopped taking anxiety medication because of it, right? Like, it has a physiological impact on your body. And so meditate often, realize that your desires are the source of your suffering, right? Yeah. The fact that you want something and that you're not already embodying it means that you'll suffer to get there. And if you can just be the future version of yourself that has already figured it out in every day, then that version of you is going to be making all of your decisions from this point forward. Yeah. And the only way that you can get there is with these practices that help you become more conscious. And so other than the prescription to hit a ridiculously long fast and do some chakra meditation, I think if you can sit with Yeshua, who is open to all, right? He does it for free. He just does these seminars and stuff and helps people do it. Seek him out and start connecting with these shards inside of your body, and you'll be all the better for it.
I often say to people, everything that you need is actually within you. And it genuinely is. We have experiences for a reason. And if we learn not to judge or to be harsh on ourselves and just actually observe the experience, then we take away what we need from it. And I think you've repeated that in so many ways today.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to talk with you. It's fun.
Eric, it really was such a joy, and I got to know you on another level. So thank you so, so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
This was Let's Pay Attention, Hacking Consciousness. Stay awake, lead with heart, be bold enough to listen deeply. I'm Cathy Dimarchos. Until next time, be the impact.